Hey guys, it's Joe and Justin with VMP's Tuning Tuesday, Season 2, Episode 14. I guess the main topic of, at least what we'll call the beginning of the show, is going to be why data logging is important and why you should think about doing it if you haven't already done it.
So, we're going to tell you a couple of things. Mm-hmm. Your tunes don't need to be data logged, but they do.
Yeah, so it's like one of those things where if you want to make sure you're getting absolutely everything out of a setup, data logging is the only way to truly know if you're getting everything out of a setup.
And yeah, and where I was coming from is we know our tunes are good. We do this all the time. Mm-hmm. The devil is in the details of how you install the parts and how they all work together, and when they don't work, data logging is the way to figure that out.
And the discrepancies between car to car, setup to setup.
Yeah. And then extract maximum horsepower and safety from your combination.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of like conflicting ideas here, but I think I can explain, both sides of the coin pretty well.
I like to think of it as I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it in terms of data.
Yeah.
Especially for guys that are going out racing, you don't even have to look at every log that you take when you're out at the track, but at least log when you go to the track.
Every successful racer logs every single pass because that's invaluable data.
Yeah, because it tells you what actually happened as you were going down the track.
Yeah.
It's other than that, you're going by feel. You may as well be driving a pushrod car with no ability to log.
Might as well be driving a carbureted
like a 60s Mustang.
Yeah.
We're in the technology era of infotainment and unnecessary data, but at least we have the data.
Who needs a wideband when you can smell the exhaust?
Oh God, don't start on that.
Oh man, I started up my car and it smells rich. Well, yes, it burns hydrocarbons. It should smell like hydrocarbons.
Larry Duran says he data logs like a madman.
I know, and I love it.
And he says,
Oh,
and hello,
man.
Team BMP.
Hola, Larry.
Paul Bryanston says, hi, guys.
Hey.
He has a question.
Mm-hmm.
He says he's planning on a blower swap for his 10 GT500.
Mm-hmm.
Would a Ford Racing TBS versus Trinity TBS versus Gen 3 be of much gain per dollar ratio for 91 pump fuel?
I'd say it depends entirely upon the purchase price of each one of those blowers.
And I was having a conversation with a customer who already has a Trinity 2.3, and that was, I think, I brought you in on that yesterday. So I broke it down for him in great detail. Well, listen, if you do camshafts, you're probably not going to take them out and be able to resell them.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to spend probably 3 days installing them, and all these other factors. So kind of talking about the horsepower per dollar. This guy's question is a little bit different, but similar idea. For somebody that's already made that decision, has a 2.3, and I was like, what do I do next? And it was 91 pump gas.
That, and this guy's also, yeah, like you said, 91 pump gas. So if we do want to do simple math on this, let's say you can find a used Gen 1 TVS, old Ford Racing TVS for $1,000, and you can find a 1314 TVS for $2,000, and the Gen 3 you're buying new or doing a trade-in with your old blower, and what would we call that, right at 4?
Yeah, just under 4,
okay.
Basically, if you're doing some type of trade-in.
Exactly. So 91 octane being your limiting factor, you need supporting cold air intake and injection if you don't already have it. Then I'd say Ford Racing TVS is probably going to be the highest at dollar per horsepower, but not going to be the highest peak horsepower level. And if you're looking to go C16 or more mods down the road, the Gen 3 makes a lot more sense. But if you wanted at least to get your feet wet in it, you could get the Ford Racing, or not Ford Racing TVS, the Trinity TVS, run that for a while, and then as a next mod, do the Gen 3, and hopefully if you do it quickly enough, we might still have the trade-in program around, which allows you to make a little bit of money back on the blower. If not, depending on how you buy it, all your money back. You'd have to buy it pretty right for that, though.
And I'm going to say at the end of the day, there's not a whole lot of they stopped making the Trinity blowers. You can't buy them from Ford Racing anymore, or at least they're not making them anymore. You might be able to still buy the remnants. We're still making new superchargers for GT500s, both Gen 2Rs and Gen 3s. So they're going to be around for a while. That other stuff is limited availability, however you want to look at that.
And I'd say the market's pretty saturated with used blowers, so.
Yeah. I did have one guy was finally able to get some good money for his Gen 2R, and that was installing his Gen 3 was dependent upon that to make the math work out for him. Sorry, Carrie, what were you going to say?
No, go ahead and finish saying what you were saying.
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay. Jeff Lucina wants to know, Joe, are you going bear hunting?
With
meanwhile,
knife?
Chuck Carter's chiming in, says, meanwhile, Ford is building a new pushrod engine.
Exactly.
Yeah, how about them pushrod engines?
But I bet it has widebands.
Oh, yeah.
And a tack pickup.
Hey, Chuck, we're going to put one of those in my V6 Mustang.
It's going to be schnasty.
Alan says, I have a Gen 3 on my 03 Cobra with a 3.3 upper, only makes about 18.5 PSI. How much boost drop do you think I'll get adding ARH 1 3/4 headers, 3-inch primaries, and X pipe? I'd like to pulley back down.
So, it's usually about a pound, but try not to focus on boost too much, man.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do a 3.2, do a 3.2. And if you already have no cats on your Cobra, like that's like 75 to 90% of the restriction.
Because they run 2 cats.
4 kitty cats.
Yeah.
Reggie Smith says he's installing an 18 manifold on my 12 GT. Should I data log the tune?
Depends. Are you tuned by us? Do you feel like you accurately describe the modifications to the car? Are you okay with doing what I'd expect to be 20 minutes worth of work? Both setting up the file and just taking a log? I mean, if you're okay with all that, I wouldn't say there's a reason not to data log it.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty easy to data log. You know, if you're tuned by us, you purchased a level 2 tune for an intake manifold swap. It comes with 3 data log reviews and adjustments, and it comes with that. So A, we can make sure you're getting peak performance, and B, there's a decent chance that a vacuum line we deal with this all the time. There's a decent chance there's something else that's going on, could be going on after an installation, and
he says yes, it's tuned by BMP. And
data log reviews will ensure that there are no installation errors.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find the best way to word that, Joe.
Yeah, exactly. There's not a lot of the hoses directly slide over, so you got to kind of work with like adapter hoses or adapter fittings. And
we have a customer that, luckily he's only like an hour and a half away, but I was working with him on Facebook over the weekend, and he's like, I've got these codes, and I'm like, doing an intake manifold swap in a tune doesn't give you these codes. You know, there's something else going on. If you can't data log your car, we would be happy to do that in the parking lot for you. But, you know, beyond that, if we have to fix anything. But anyways, my point of the story is that will solve, you know, will at least be a good direction to go, because the car was fine beforehand, according to him.
Yep.
Jason wants to know, how do you tell a wideband sensor from a narrowband?
I assume you mean like externally just looking at it, or do you mean like by looking in a log?
It's funny that you said that, because Casati came on and said, do you mean visually? So, same question.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to say, I think the narrowbands have 4 wires, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, 4 wire, and then wideband I believe is 5.
5 or 6.
But I know that some of like the 18 up stuff, it might be 4 wire.
Oh.
I'll have to look at a connector again, but
I wonder where they get.
At the end of the day, it's easiest to tell based on model year and engine.
We know what cars come with widebands, yeah. I mean, it's not like you're going to be like, oh, I got a wideband, I plugged it into this wideband. Like, the connectors and the controllers are specific to the brand and model of wideband sensor.
Yep.
Travis Dean is chiming in from Kenya.
Awesome.
He's watching from Kenya.
How's the trip going, Travis?
He's talking about zebras right now, but he's still chiming in.
Awesome.
Beards and Cars says, you guys should do a video, start to finish, on how to data log and pull it from scanner all the way to emailing it to load it up the new tune. Hell, I don't know how to do it.
How?
We have, at least for SCT, not for VCM scanner, because we don't do any tuning with customers with MPVI cables. The closest we'll get to data logging with a customer with HP is with an Engage. And in the interest of expediency, I just made an Engage data logging video a couple months ago.
Michelle Wilbur's chiming in saying data log is super important. Not only does it confirm all is well, but also to help identify installation errors. Not to mention it allows us to see issues that are not caused by incorrect installation or a tune, such as issues with malfunctioning O2 sensors and overheating due to lack of coolant flow. Keith Smith says, how do I get my 2015 computer no start?
How do you, what?
Does that make sense to
Why
you?
come no tattoo?
Okay. Larry says, question, what's a safe RPM limit on the 11 to 12 GT500? My current mods put me around 730 to the wheel. Is having a 6500 red line okay, or pushing it on these cars?
And he said on a GT500?
Yeah, 1112 GT500.
So the stock limiter would be 6500.
Or 6250 on that year.
Yeah, but there's I guess if you're looking at hard limit versus EOT and stuff, because EOT is $7,000 on those.
Gotcha.
But no, I wouldn't anticipate there being an issue revving to 6500. We rev those on a pretty regular basis to 67. And then 1314s with a similar bottom, like rotating assembly. And by rotating assembly, I mean crankshaft, because at the end of the day, that's the most important part next to rods in terms of RPM. And from what I hear, 1314s have a weaker rod because of how they have to profile it to fit the skirt of the 5/8 piston.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
But those rev 7,000 RPM when the EOT criteria is met, or ECT criteria. So to that end, I think that 6700 is completely safe on a GT500. I just wouldn't live at 6700 to $7,000.
Snowcone says, hey,
Hola.
Levi just came on and said Joe is a god.
I disagree, but I appreciate it.
Let's see. Busted Bug says, if I am looking at data logs at home, what are the most important parameters to look at?
It depends on which portion of the log you're looking at. If you're looking at an idle slow rev, there's not really anything that's going to hurt the car or change the way that it change the type of power it's making. So in that sense, as long as the car is running okay, there's not a whole lot to worry about looking at an idle slow rev log. But in terms of like a wide open throttle log or going through the gears and stuff like that, you just want to make sure you're not getting excessive knock. And yeah, I want to be careful how I tell you guys how to heavy breathe about this, because they're all going to heavy breathe.
Yeah, I mean, like, oh, my air fuel went 13 to 1 for a second. I had to lift. Well, when Joe and I are tuning, if we see air fuel go lean for like a split second, a portion of a second, it's not a big deal. It's sustained or trending lean air fuel that may force us to abort a pull, combined with short-term fuel trims that are not correcting fast enough.
Yeah.
In the case of a wideband car. So that's probably another video, how to read your data logs in different situations.
I almost don't even want to get into that.
Yeah, it's
just because it's like, you basically just need to know that, hey, I don't have 10 degrees of knock because I'm running 87 octane in a 93 tune.
Yeah.
I'd say that's the most important thing, but next to that would just be making sure that you're not going lean, in the sense that your short-term fuel trims at wide open throttle aren't 1.2 and your measured AFR is going 0.95, 0.98 on a wideband car, because then that's a situation where, yeah, something's clearly wrong. Either you have a fuel pump issue or a fuel pressure issue because of a fuel pump issue, or a faulty reading from a wideband where you get like one bank that's 0.98 or 1.99 at watt, and it's like it's open loop mirroring fuel trims and all sorts of other stuff.
Yeah, so it's like if you look at one single parameter in your data logs, you would come up with incorrect conclusions, but it's a confluence of various parameters all trending in the correct direction.
Yeah, and I guess the main point of making this the topic of discussion for today is just to make sure that if you're going to take your car to a dyno, data log the car if it's going on the dyno. If you're going to take your car to the track, data log it when it's going to the track.
That's our favorite Monday morning question, you know. My car didn't make the horsepower on the dyno. Why?
Yep, and 9 times out of 10, it's either intercooler pump's not bled, the fuel quality is garbage, false knock from aftermarket headers touching something, or the car sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes to an hour heating itself up. They pulled it immediately onto the dyno without letting it cool off, because 30 minutes sitting in a parking lot is not letting it cool off, that's letting it heat up.
Yeah, like we do this all day long. We got temperature guns, we got fans and shit like that. You know, you let your car sit in a parking lot in the sun with the hood closed, and the hood has an insulating blanket on it, so it just bakes everything under there. Like,
yeah, so I'd say until you get into that like 2 hours of the car sitting,
yeah,
the car is just slowly going up in terms of downstream air temp in the lower cars, and then it kind of like reaches its peak, and then it slowly starts to come back down.
So you need, like, you know, positive cooling, hood open, fan. If you have
decent airflow.
If you have like a 5-liter car where the intercooler pump runs with the key on, you know, you do that for 5 or 10 minutes, and you at least circulate the water and cool the water in the reservoir off till it's, you know, just barely warm.
I'd say that's like the primary goal of telling people log.
Yeah.
It's not like, hey, I have a car that runs completely fine, but I want to find something to freak out about type thing. So, go ahead.
Sorry.
You're good.
Are we good?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Paul says, thanks for the reply, guys. I'm going to go with the used Ford Racing Gen 1 TVS with a 2.4 pulley for my 10 Shelby on 91 octane.
Go ahead, Carrie, and then there's a couple things Paul needs to know.
Okay, what are your thoughts on a fuel pump booster or a drop-in DW300M 340L PH coupled with a 13-14 Shelby stock injectors?
So we'll start from easiest to hardest. The stock injectors out of the Shelby are great. We use those a lot as a low-cost, direct fit, easy to tune solution. They're actually in all of our 5-liter kits as well. Additionally, the 2.4 pulley will not fit without machining the snout.
On the Gen 1 TVS?
Yeah, on the Ford Racing Gen 1 TVS. If it's a VMP, you're good. But the original Ford Racing TVSs, which, by the way, there's like 1,000 of them out there, the snout was actually tapered. So we had to make the inside of our 2.5 pulley tapered to match. And as far as I know, our pulley is the smallest one that actually fits, so it's to be our 2.5 stock look. And we make a high flow inlet elbow for that. You know, we've got the bigger throttle bodies and everything, so that should kind of set you up on the rest of your way there. Sorry. Anything else you can think of, Joe? Oh, the pump
340
question.
pumps. I would skip those and do a fuel pump booster. Based on what I've seen with the GT500, factory fuel pumps versus aftermarket fuel pumps, because I've seen AEM 320s and DW340 swapped in. And in every one of those cases, I've had to increase fuel pump voltage table to get it to achieve the same fuel flow at the same pressure.
So it's actually smaller.
Yeah, or effectively not capable of flowing as well at less voltage.
Yeah, and you quickly run out of voltage on a car at,
Yeah.
you know, by the time the voltage gets to the pump, even if your electrical system's at like 14 volts, there's losses through the FPDM and through the wiring. So you're down to like 13 volts at the pump. And that's what I was going to say. Our fuel pump voltage boosters, they increase voltage. They don't increase current. They increase voltage. So you more efficiently move the electricity to the pump, and you give the car, you know, it's all pulse width modulated. So you give more dynamic range and potential fuel flow. And you protect against things like failed alternators and stuff like that, running lean because your alternator failed, because that booster is always giving 18 volts to the fuel pumps.
Jonathan Whitaker's chiming in, says hi.
Hey, Jonathan.
Hola.
The Goblin says, hey guys, what pulley combo do you need on a Gen 3 blower to make over 800 wheel?
Depends on the platform.
I'd say if it's, well, we could throw a couple numbers out there, right? GT500, somewhere between 2.4 and 2.6, depending on, with the stock lower.
Depending on the other modifications
Yeah.
on the car.
You
I've
know.
made 800 wheel, I think, on a 2.7 pulley on a
2.7.
GT500 before, but that one did have cams, so.
Cams, okay, so it's an easy 800.
Yeah, exactly. That was on pump gas.
On pump gas, nice.
Yep, 93 and a splash of boosting. And 5 liter, you want to make 800 wheel, like a 75, 79 millimeter pulley, depending on the setup.
Yeah.
Should be fairly easy with that pulley. I've even seen it on like 82 before. And then Cobra, that'd be like
All the fucking boost.
yeah, like a 3.0 4-pound or 3.2, I guess 3.2 4-pound would probably
3.2,
get it
4
done.
pound, yeah.
Yep.
Paul came back and said you guys are killer.
Awesome.
He
Thanks,
says-
Paul.
He says I'll be calling when the work is done for another killer VMP tune.
Awesome.
Cool.
And keep in mind, all the parts that you buy from us would be a free tune update. Not that there'd be much incentive to. I guess there'd still be incentive to buy a new blower, but I'm saying to save money on a tune update, I don't know that you're going to offset the cost by buying a new blower versus a used blower, but all the other parts would help push you in that direction.
Slab Check says, can a Coyote computer be used to run a Windsor? I've seen an LS system on a Windsor. I was wondering if the benefits would be significant.
I don't know what the RPM limits are on the different LS processors, but one could argue that you could use a Coyote computer on a Windsor. You'd have to, I want to say you couldn't use a distributor style ignition. You'd have to put I think it's a 36 tooth or 34 tooth reluctor on it. You'd have to move to a traditional style cam pickup for like GT500 style. You'd have to go to coil unplug ignition or some semblance of it. It'd be a lot of things you'd have to do. I'd say your better bet would probably be an aftermarket standalone.
Yeah, I mean, there's the time where we preached, factory computers for a lot of potential unique applications, but if they're not incredibly plug and play, there's a lot of standalone stuff that's like meant for those types of different swaps.
And there's a lot of stuff that you'd have to quote unquote hack around to get it to work properly
Yeah.
in the ECU, whereas you're almost better off just starting from a clean slate and then instead of finding each individual thing that you have to screw with to get it to work properly.
Jeff Scarlin says, so on the upcoming 1819 F-150 Coyote kits, other than the direct injection and 10-speed auto, is there anything to be much of a difference between that and the 1517 F-150 kits?
Well, given the opportunity to design a whole new supercharger kit, they will be much different. But this is more knobs to turn, more things to deal with, more ways to make horsepower, because the 18 Di 10-speed cars are very quick.
True story.
Yeah.
Nathan Hunt says, hello guys, decided to stay NA on the 19A10. What's the first mod you'd suggest? Headers, cold air, tune, etc., and which brands?
Is this our Nathan Hunt?
Yeah, it's our Nathan Hunt.
I thought he was driving a Chevy.
No, he had a 16 GT with one of our blowers on
I
it.
thought he had this wasn't the one with this wasn't the Nathan with the Corvette, is it?
No, different Nathan. Your shit's blowing up today.
I know.
You got to do that D&D life. But to more directly answer your question, Nathan, if you run a 93 octane, I'd say your best bet's set of long tubes. Just depends on what type of emissions concerns you have to have about stuff like that. And then I'd say next best thing, if you have E85 available, is definitely get a tune on that thing.
No fuel system upgrades required for 18 up to go E85 because
Yeah, they got all the DI they need to supply fuel at watt.
16 injectors.
Yeah.
And a cold air, a tune, maybe a ported VMP upper intake manifold, CNC ported VMP / airflow solutions one, and we'll get you rocking out. I mean, that
They
setup.
make great power.
Yeah.
He said no emissions issues, we have E85.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Tune, long tubes, E85, cold air.
I think we could get you running low 10s with all those things,
It's possible.
and going or did I say low 11s?
You said low 10s.
Low-
I was
low
like,
11s.
oh my, ambitious.
High 10s in absolute perfect conditions with weight reduction, or just honestly, if you're going to drive the car to the track and not get stupid, like mid to low 11s, and it's nothing to sneeze at out of an NA car that you'll have, a couple grand in.
Yeah.
Rebecca says, Justin's blowing up all day, every day, Joe.
Oh, I know. I know, and I know.
Yeah. Larry says, who had the question about the safe RPM limits on the 11 to 12 GT500? He says, thanks for the answer. He's a diehard fan.
Awesome.
You're welcome, Larry.
Poor boy 313 says, good afternoon, BMP. Your oil pump gears sound so solid when you drop them.
Yep.
So interesting.
He watched the video.
Topic transition. So you recall the Celine S7s? Were those using a 2-valve ECU back in the day? Like an E5 2-valve ECU?
Probably some type of E5 ECU.
Because I remember seeing the engine to one of them, and it looked like it had 2-valve coil-on plugs with like a spark plug wire put out.
Oh, wow. And that was like a 427?
Yeah, it was a 427 or a 408. Like small block Ford.
It's got aluminum block 427 or something? I don't know. But yeah. Somebody was talking about those on some. Oh, did Doug DeMuro review like an S7 or talk about one or something?
He did.
Yeah. Wow. What a blast from the past.
One of our regulars, Shelby Canada West, says, hello, everybody.
Hey.
If anyone remembers driving the Celine S7 in Need for Speed, like the OG Need for Speeds, post in the comments.
King Cobra says 13 GT500 bone stock, tune only on 91 octane. What's a good amount of timing on a watt pull that's safe if it matters? DA is 5,000 on average.
Oh God. You said 13 GT500 with what pulley on it?
He didn't bone stock, tune only, 91 octane.
Sucker should be running 18, 19 degrees.
Yeah.
Was that the question though, timing, or was it?
Yeah, it was like what type of safe timing should he be
good
seeing
amount of
at
timing on a
5,000?
watt pull.
So that car will make about 1.8 load at sea level. Probably makes 1.4, 1.5 up there. And so I just bring that up because the timing tables are based on load and RPM. Because you're trying to target peak cylinder pressure based on fuel octane. So
This is 1.6. King Cobra came back and said 1.6.
1.6
Okay.
load. That's pretty good
Yeah.
for 5,000 feet. So probably you could be seeing like 15, 16 degrees. It honestly depends on what the NOx sensor's doing and air
Yeah, I
temp
think
and everything else.
The freedom that most of our, at least if he's talking about RCal, at that load region should be about 1 to 1.5 polar add.
He says, thanks, guys.
No problem, man.
Well Test Services says, what do you consider to be a safe level of boost for a daily driven 18 Pro charged F-150? Also, do you offer any throttle body upgrades that you would recommend?
So this is Chris Uttman, the Pro Charged F-150 that we tuned. I don't know if there's a quote-unquote safe boost level as long as the octane is there. With the fuel quality that you were using and how much timing we were seeing, I consider what you're doing to be safe. And the way that Pro Chargers build boost, they don't build a relatively flat boost curve, kind of like one of our PD blowers does. So like towards the top of his dyno poles and stuff like that, we are seeing around 12 pounds. But when you look at where it's shifting on the street, which should be around 5,700, 6,200, unless he's in like sport mode, you're only at like 10 pounds in that region. So, so like, I'd say that you're at what I'd consider to be the safe level on 93 octane pump gas. If you wanted to do any more, I'd recommend more octane. But frankly, if you're going to do that, we need to figure out something on the fuel injection side of things. You're probably going to need a booster to do anything else. And then I'd probably look at upgrading the port injectors to something a tiny bit bigger, just because they're stock port injectors in that ProCharger kit.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Stock port injection. Essentially, all they do from a fueling standpoint is change the map sensor.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of cool that the stock DI Coyote can support 10, 12 pounds of boost.
Yeah.
Given at the lower RPM that the trucks kind of run to begin with, but
Yeah, exactly.
RJ says, when you start building a custom tune, do you increase performance after analyzing the data log? I purchased the Level X tune for my Coyote with the Roush Stage 2 Supercharger, and it seems the latest tune has much more performance than the first two.
So, especially with the Level X stuff, the intention of Level X is for Coyote swap stuff, so I assume that your car is Coyote swap. But with the Coyote swap stuff, because we know that most of these guys have had their cars down for a year, maybe 2 years, putting a Coyote in it, we know that the fuel quality most likely isn't going to be what we want it to be. And worst case scenario, this is a car that was completely stock prior to having a Coyote put in it. So sometimes we'll get cars that had a fill of 87 octane, and the guys gets so caught up in his own excitement of, man, I just put a supercharged Coyote in my car. What's the first thing I need to do? Rolling burnouts at 60 miles an hour on the street before I send my tuner a data log.
Joe, that's how you test them.
I'm going to die.
You check everything. It even tells you, if you go and beat on that car, it even tells you if every nut and bolt is tight. Because they would come out at that point if they were. You would just not believe the things we hear.
RJ came back and said, yes, it's a 66 Mustang.
So Joe's talking about fuel quality, and there's even like, is the fuel system big enough? Like, you can save a motor from running lean by pulling timing back. So on that, like major tune rework level X type stuff, because that's what that is, essentially, we pull timing back just to save hopefully save you if there's like a lean situation.
That, and with Level X, we really want logs, and I don't want it to ever be one of those situations where I send you a base tune and you're under some weird assumption that everything's going to be 100% on a Coyote swap car where you have about 50 moving targets in terms of how the tune needs to be set up, and you never send me a log, and about 6 months later I get an email, hey, so I'm having some problems with it, it's making some noise. Hey dude, I didn't even know you were driving this, I sent you a base tune 6 months ago. Like, I don't know what you want me to do for you now. So at the end of the day, yes, it's normal for them to be a little bit low on power on the first couple files until we have everything shaken out and we know what type of octane we're dealing with and we can start putting some power back in it.
EJ wants to know, what's a good air-fuel ratio on an NA Gen 1 pump gas at watt?
Air-fuel ratio, we're watching the dash.
Yeah, I hate giving people answers on this. Essentially, like wide open throttle, you can be anywhere from 0.85 to 70 lambda, depending on whether or not you're in cap protection, or what RPM you're at, or...
The factory tables command 0.85 lambda at low RPM and 0.82 at high RPM.
Exactly.
And if you ever want to convert lambda to air fuel, you take the stoichiometric air fuel point in the ECU and you multiply it by lambda, and that gives you the air fuel ratio.
But that doesn't give you the air fuel ratio for the gauge output.
Because we were talking about that last show that it's different.
Yeah. And it's like...
the gauge output is an estimation only.
Yeah, that, and you have like 3 different stoich points in the data log that you can look at to convert from lambda to AFR. It's like measured AFR 1408, measured AFR 1464, measured AFR 14.4. So they're all based on different AFR stoichiometric air fuel targets. So at the end of the day, just look at measured AFR, aka lambda, in the data log, not in the dash. Screw what the dash says, forget the dash. Do not look at the dash. Data log, and you can see that if it's doing what's commanded, it'll be within a couple percent.
And it's interesting that the PID is called measured AFR, but it's actually the actual value is lambda.
Yeah.
But like this is like knowing like different languages and stuff. In tuner speak, we're just like, we see this value, we look at the data, we know that's the right one to look at, even if there were no names on them.
Yeah.
They all have a certain range, and they're all going to be in that range under certain situations.
RJ says, awesome, thank you. So far, so good. We'll have the next data log on dyno sent to you guys soon.
Awesome.
You guys rock. Eli says there's a free program called LiveLink that you can pull up your logs on if it's after hours or you're at the track and need some info. It's like a poor man's Hollywood program. Phone program.
And that is the same tool you would use to data log on a laptop if we were remote tuning your car, or you would use to pull data logs off the SCT tuner. You would also use it to program the SCT tuner with the parameters to data log.
And if we're tuning your car with HP, and you're using an N-Gauge, you can view HP Tuner's N-Gauge data logs in LiveLink or Scanner or Megalog Viewer, just like how you can import .csv logs from SET, taken with an SET device, into Scanner or into Megalog Viewer, or basically any CSV formatted data log viewer.
It's really just, so when I first started tuning, we had to look at our data in Excel. This was 2003. It came out of a Cardac, and config files, they were a luxury. And you know what? That's why Jerry built LiveLink, is because we were building addresses and config files manually for the Cardac. But point of the matter is, we used to look at data in CSV, and it's just in Excel, it's just columns. You got a title, you got a time index, and then you got the data at that time index, and you just kind of look at RPM, whatever. And I used to tune cars that way.
Yep. Occasionally I'll be using that on my phone.
Yes.
It takes forever, especially trying to scroll through your phone just to look at a watt log, but in a pinch it works.
How far we've come in 15 years now.
Rebecca says, and then you had to chisel it into Excel.
The Flintstone style?
She's making fun of me. That's how old I am.
Oh man, you're not much older than me, don't feel bad.
So a question is coming in regarding tunes and older tunes that have been had. And apparently he had a tune back in 2017 that was done by one tuner. And he wanted to know whether or not the handhelds hold on to the data from the original tuner, because he liked the way his car performed with it. So is it possible to get that data back onto, does that make sense?
If it was deleted from the device, the only way to get that data back onto the tuner is to contact the old tuner and have them resend you the programs.
And I got an interesting question about, we used to have another tuner that worked at VMP, whether their tuning support applied or, anything. We still, if you purchased it, if you got it from VMP, we still have it. We own all of that regardless of who tuned it. Additionally, I think what the person may have been trying to ask, through Carrie, is that the tune file versus the data from the tune file, we actually look at those as two different things, because the data is recorded from the car. The tune file is something we push into the car to tell it what to do. But if there's we have older versions of your tune.
Yeah, we don't overwrite the tune every time and save it as one file.
Yeah.
But that's assuming that he's talking about being tuned by us.
Right.
So.
I'm assuming yes.
Okay.
And
it was a VMP tune back in 2017.
Okay. Then yeah, just hit us up. Let us know what you want.
Daniel says, what do I need to do to make my stock S550 A6 run low 10s? I know it's a loaded question, but what will I need as far as suspension, drivetrain, engine?
So, citing example, what we did to run 9s with our car, put our blower on it, put it on race gas, and sent it.
Pretty much.
And a tire.
Yeah. Ain't gonna be hard.
I think the only thing we changed in front suspension, and I'm not sure that it had a net result, was we put V6 front springs on it.
Yeah.
Or EcoBoost springs, and I don't think that really did anything.
No. Didn't really do jack squat.
But other than that, we didn't have the stop hop or anything on that yet. Didn't we do like the cradle lockouts or something?
Yeah, we did some Stita stuff, some very, very basic Stita stuff back early in 2015. And at one point it had BMR toe links on it, but I don't think those really did anything.
Yeah, like it allowed us to adjust it, but I don't think it changed whether or not we got the times that we did.
Right.
And I still think that we did still think we got 9s without that stuff. I think we just started adding that stuff on to get deeper into the 9s, especially when we put the converter in it. But carry on. See what I did there? Carry on.
I got that. Hey.
We got 15 minutes, guys.
Dun, dun. Benny from Sweden is chiming in and says he's very happy with how the car runs, but still needs help with data logging. Can you help me over the phone as we did last year?
I can. I'd say that your best resource, at least to visually represent what needs to be done, is the videos that we have on data logging. If there's an explanation you need beyond looking at the videos, feel free to give me a call, but the videos explain it very, very well, and because you have a visual thing you can look at to compare with what you see on your screen, a lot of the times that helps more than a phone call does. But phone line's open. If you want to call, you can call.
Caleb wants to know, what is the true reason behind the Coyote tick at around 2,000 RPM range? I have a 17 GT with long tubes,
bother.
and a local shop claims it's just the echo off the pipes from the valves.
I think it's dependent on the individual situation.
Yeah, I don't think there's a global answer for that, especially if the car already has long tubes. I know that traditionally with all the cars that I've owned that I put long tubes on, headers have a very distinct sound. I don't know what causes that distinct sound in terms of a more tinny sound. I imagine that it's because there's less mass to absorb sound in a long tube than there is like a cast iron manifold or a 16 or 14 gauge wall stainless steel stamped header or the factory tri-Y stuff.
The factory tri-Y stuff's pretty rigid the way all the tubes go together.
Mm-hmm. And then you also have the aspect of not all headers are welded perfectly. Occasionally you'll get a little pinhole that can lead to some noise that you might perceive as being engine noise that could just be a little bit of an exhaust leak.
Now, don't like luxury cars have like double wall exhaust to be quieter?
I don't know.
And I only say this because I think Rebecca's, and this isn't necessarily a luxury car, her old SRT8 Jeep, I think it had like double wall mid-pipe or something coming off the engine.
Interesting.
And technically, the inlet to the cat on a 11 up car, Coyote car, GT500 is actually double walled to insulate and get more heat into the cat on cold start. But little things like that, just they reduce noise so much.
Jordan says it's not a tick, it's more of a rattle at 18 to 2200 RPM.
Probably some frequency where just, you're finding the frequency at which something resonates.
That or well, that's most likely what it is, but it could also be just like a bolt that's a little bit loose on the mid-pipe or a nut on a header that's backed off like an eighth of a turn and just at that right frequency is vibrating.
Dorian says, I'm late, but I'm here. Rebecca says it was
Hi,
a
Dorian.
luxury car, my first car with heated seats. I said.
Oh, man.
Hey, Dorian.
Jed says, what are your takes on upgrading the coil packs for an 18 Mustang GT? GMS coil packs.
Do it. Do not do it. Do not waste your money. Use the stock coil packs. Especially on an 18 with all that weird, one has a spark plug wire and a coil type thing. And
He's just asking for trouble.
just no.
Let's make stickers for the coil packs. We could actually have like the aluminum plates made.
Mm-hmm.
You could put like racing on them.
Oh, God.
And I don't want to do like any false advertising, so we're just gonna put racing on the stickers for the coil packs and just you draw your own conclusion as to what that means.
Don't do it. Swerve.
Poor Boy says, am I able to use my SCTX4 or laptop to log when I'm on the dyno? Which would be best to use?
You could use both. If you're doing multiple logs, it's probably best to do it all on the computer because it saves you the process of having to disconnect, reconnect to the computer. If you're doing one log, as long as the configuration file is set up on your SET device, you can do the log on the dyno, stop it, and then transfer it to your computer and send it to your tuner, which I believe is us for you, Poor Boy. But if not, then you can send it to whoever's tuning the car.
Yeah. I think it's just like on the computer, it's nice to have all the parameters. You know the data's there. You're not going to lose it.
Mm-hmm. You know that you didn't accidentally double tap and kill all the data you took on the last one or any stupid stuff like that.
Can't tell you how many times I put the X4 in the cup holder and I make a pass and I come back and I'm like, oh, you're not data logging anymore. When I launched, flipped and the button got pushed. So, when we were logging Rebecca's car with an X4, we actually had it mounted on the dash.
Mm-hmm.
Corey says, I recently put a VMP Gen 2 on my 2012. He doesn't say what 2012, but on his 2012. I'm currently running E85 and tuner says the car won't take more than 18 degrees of timing. Some logs I'm seeing 1+ knock that gradually drops throughout the pull. This is between 3,000 and 6,000 RPM in third gear. Knock sensors are currently turned down by 40%. Plugs look fine. Could the knock I have turn the knock sensors too much, or should I be looking elsewhere for things hitting?
So if I was tuning this car, and I'm going to give you the quick and dirty, and I was on a good fuel that I knew was a good fuel, and my air fuel was
like
right.
E85.
Yeah, E85 is a very good fuel. I would just turn the knock sensor off, and I would listen for audible knock, and I would lift if I heard it. Do not stay in.
If you hear audible knock on E85, good luck.
And my point is, you probably won't hear audible knock.
Yeah, exactly. I'd say that if your tuner isn't very, very, very experienced with Coyotes and E85, that you may want to find someone that is, because if you're only running 18 degrees on E85, you're leaving a pretty significant amount of power on the table with that car. And I mean, at the end of the day, does that power mean anything to you? Maybe not. You may be happy with the way the car runs as it's set up. But for most guys that are running E85, the whole point of running E85 is to get more timing. Like, depending on what pulley combo you're on, 18 degrees is a safe pump gas timing. Like if you're only on like an 82 or 85 millimeter pulley on one of the older Gen 2 TVSs, that's a relatively safe pump gas timing. So you've added all this added money and expense into putting an E85 capable fuel system in the car. You need to at least be able to take advantage of it, and your tuner needs to at least know that on any semblance of decent quality E85, you do not get any real detonation, and he needs to know how to calibrate around that.
Gap Time wants to know, what power level or upgrades is it a good idea to go to a 170-degree thermostat over stock, and would there be any issues with winter driving?
No.
So I'd say the only issue you would have with winter driving is if there's entry criteria to meet open loop for your specific car, and you have emissions testing revolving around that. But speaking in large and in general broad statements, there shouldn't be an issue running a 170-degree thermostat. I'd say your only chance of having an issue would be not running a thermostat in a colder climate. And then what was his other question?
And just whether it's okay, like at what point. You know, I would say that whether the car's stock or it's modified, you're not going to hurt anything running a little bit cooler. You are going to want to tune it to make sure that you get the benefit of the cooler thermostat, because otherwise the fan still doesn't come on to like 210, 220.
Yeah, I'd say by and large, if you have any concerns about engine temps or keeping them cool, that's a point in which putting a thermostat in the car is worth it.
Let's see here. Eli says the lower bolt hole, the trans bolt hole, where the window is on my block is cracked on the driver's side. It seems like a super weak part of the block. Do I need to fix this, or can I send it in? Where can I send it?
I'd probably just have it welded by a reputable aluminum welder. Depends on what's wrong with it, though.
I've seen that a couple times. Unfortunately, the lower ears are very weak on a Coyote.
Mm-hmm.
And
especially when you run those transmissions that don't have a whole bottom to the bell housing.
Yeah.
Jordan says, what are your thoughts on the rattling noise in the Gen 3 Coyote at 18 to 2200 at low speeds?
It's just so... People have taken engines apart and not found anything. There's just so many things going on that it's...
And I've seen a couple that are cylinder liner wear, and it's like, at the end of the day, if you're worried about it, do something about it. If you're not worried about it, or if you're not going to do anything about it besides talk about it, then don't. Stop talking about it.
And you're modifying the car. I mean, there's the potential for long tube header noises. The cold factory intake silences a lot of intake track noise. You got valves, you got 16 injectors, you know, all kinds of stuff going on, which obviously the DI injectors are not going to fire with an open valve, but
yeah.
You got 8 injectors. So, like, if you modify a car and then wonder what the noise is, don't. Please.
Yeah. Nathan wants to know, is there a flex tune or is it straight E85 tune?
Right now, we like to do straight E85 tunes, especially for blower combinations. Joe is working on flex fuel tunes for 11 to 14 for Coyote, basically, and a Coyote.
Yeah. Just looking to make people's lives a little bit easier when they want to be lazy.
Jeremy wants to know, are you guys going to make a universal supercharger kit for the Coyote swap guys? He's got an 83 F100 with a Coyote and a 6R80.
I feel like you have to be very careful about saying universal when it comes to Coyote Swap Kit.
And unfortunately, like within the Coyote Swap world, there's a couple different ways to do things. You can have the power steering pump where the AC is, or you can have the AC where the power steering pump is. You can run the alternator in the factory location. You can
Or
run
you have no
flipped.
power steering, or you have no AC, or a combination of the two.
Yeah. So there are various. The belt drive is the only variable, so we need to know how you're setting your car up to recommend the right belt drive components. But we would like to support Coyote Swap people as much as possible. Obviously, we do the tuning for them. The Supercharger kit fits a Coyote. We can tell you different nuances of the installation, recommend cold airs, etc., things like that.
World Test Services says, thanks guys, I appreciate all the help and love the tune. I'll have some logs for you today.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Victor says, no questions, just listening in and saying you guys are awesome.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Brandon wants to know ETA on an 1819 blower.
We're working on it. We were talking about it today.
Any chance you guys might offer a stage 2 Calumet transmissions?
If I recall correctly, Ben was wanting to keep all those
Yeah.
close to the vest just because of the layer of, or the extra layer of complexity and modification involved with doing it.
Yeah.
Then I think he needs a core transform and stuff.
Yeah, there's some stuff that it's easier just to deal with Ben directly on. Like the stage 3s, he's selling them as fast as he can get parts for them and everything.
17 Roush says, I'm wanting to do long tubes on my 17 Roush. Will I have to have a tune revision on it? Also, it will be no cats. Our state doesn't care about emissions, and I will have CEL on, or CEL on.
So if you're okay with check engine light, the simple answer to your question is you do not need a tune update for long tubes. But is it a good idea to have one done? It is not a bad idea, and I'd say with an inclination more towards it's a good idea. The car will run and drive fine without a tune update for long tubes.
Mike wants to know, when tuning a cam install, does the AFR usually go lean or rich in your experience?
Typically, if we're talking about a cam with a decent amount of overlap at idle, the O2 sensor readings will trend towards lean at idle because you are getting fresh air pulled across the O2 sensor that was not normally getting pulled across the O2 sensor, especially when you're talking about an OEM camshaft where they basically don't have any overlap.
Yeah.
Just to keep that from happening, because when you have an O2 sensor in the configuration, you almost have to keep it open loop to maintain the proper in-cylinder air-fuel ratio at the time of combustion, just so it doesn't skew the fuel trims towards the rich direction to compensate for the airflow or the oxygen that's detected going across the O2 sensor at idle and part throttle. But that's getting into the woods.
Oops, sorry.
It's all good.
Coyote Kelly wants to know about the VMP OPGs for the 18s. Yes.
Yes, they do fit 18s. I don't know if we have the description.
I'll make sure today that it's denoted.
But they fit 11 to 18s, and then it's 15 to 17 F-150s use the same OPG as the Coyote?
I don't know.
I have to double check. The F-150s used a thinner oil pump gear in certain years. You could just switch to the Mustang housing, but that's kind of the gist of it.
If data logging is done correctly, is there a difference in a tune that's done remotely versus in person on the dyno?
Depends on how you're trying to quantify that.
Yeah, I mean, because these cars have so much data acquisition built into them now, and we do these combinations so often, we pretty much know what it's going to want. You can always give it more timing. It just may not make it through the end. And the reason I bring this up is because it used to be that you need a dyno there to extract maximum horsepower from your tune, and you definitely get feedback from the dyno as to what the engine's doing. But we get so much feedback through data logging now, and we know so much about these combinations that the dyno, there's plenty of times where I could just tune a dyno just as a way to go wide open throttle, not on the street.
Yeah, for sure. It's the nice thing about dynos is it's isolated. You don't have to worry about running into another car on the street, getting pulled over, anything like that. But to that same end, Are we capable of netting the same end result on a dyno as we can on the street? Absolutely. It just depends on A, how long it takes to get there, and B, exactly what level of modifications done to the car and how many times we've tuned it before. For most of the stuff that we offer tuning support for, we've tuned it so many times in person that we're comfortable doing it via email. That's kind of like the big thing you got to keep in mind here.
Yeah, and we don't have to have a dyno, but if it's available, it can make things easier. But it's not a requirement to properly tune it or extract maximum horsepower from it.
Especially if we're talking about 11-up Coyote, 11-up GT500, stuff like that, where they come installed with knock sensors widebands. If we're talking like 10 and down stuff, I'd say that for some of those guys, a dyno can make sense if they don't want to install a wideband or they don't know how to listen for audible detonation and they want someone that has experience with that stuff to operate the dyno for them. Be able to give us the feedback we need when we're looking at logs that, hey, I got a little bit of audible detonation around 3,500, it didn't sound bad, so I stayed in it and it cleaned up. And it's like, all right, well, all right, cool, let me know how that does. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of that.
And that being said, I'll add one final factor to that. We have one of the fastest positive displacement blower Coyote cars out there that my wife Rebecca drives, and give me a racetrack and let me work everything, both the tune, the suspension, the transmission, and then that's how you get things to go fast.
Chuck says, hey Joe, my 19's ready for the sauce. Can you send me that?
Need all the sauce.
Perfect. We are going to get on that sauce, Chuck.
And with that said, we do have a number of questions, but it is 2:30. So
maybe have the tuners
ding 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 ding
chime in. I saw Matt was hitting some questions earlier, so that's great. So.
And with that said, call it a day.
We'll see everybody. I'll see you on Burnout Box at 1:30 on Thursday. With
you
Rebecca.
guys will see me next Tuesday.
Yes.
Unless you see me in person, in which case you'll see me in person.
Yes. You'll see Joe and his fluffy beard.
I know.
Next week.
I've been thinking if it's time or not. Comment if you think it's time for the beard to go or for the beard to stay. Do I need to push it to a year?
Oh, Jesus. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
See you next time.
Like, share, and subscribe.